So, this talk is all about starting your own studio. This talk is not a step by step guide on how to do it. It's just a couple of interesting pointers that I wanted to give to you to get you thinking and some tips and tricks perhaps on the start of your early days. So as me and Jill created this talk, we used Grammarly, and it sounded kind of worrying, disapproving, and sad. Um, well, it's not that it is a depressing way to start, but it's the truth. It's not easy. But if it was easy, everyone would do it. It has challenges, but it has also a lot of cool things. So don't be discouraged by the words that are being used in this presentation. So I guess we can start with the first one. We have 50, so there will be a lot of interesting tips and tricks. You don't need to remember them all, of course, but the presentation will be shared afterwards. Go through it, read a couple of them, and remember a couple of them. That's already fine. But the major one, of course, is don't start if you're scared of risk. Being an entrepreneur is risky, but it's also very exciting. Some people can cope with the risk and can work under pressure. If you're not that type of person, there's no shame in it. That's completely fine. But of course, if you want the risk and if you accept the risk, then entrepreneurship might be just the thing for you. Know what you want to do. That's also a very crucial one. In the early days, if you just want to start a studio because you want to make games, that's great. But you need to pinpoint what you want to do exactly. Do you want to make games? Do you want to make entertainment games? Do you want to make game technology? There's a wide variety of things that you can do. So know what you want to do, and more importantly, know what you don't want to do. And this is tied with know what you can do. Not everyone has the talent to create a AAA game on their own. I think no one actually can. Um, Not everyone is interested in creating great story games because they know that they're not the greatest storyteller. You need to really understand your capabilities, your skill sets, and based on that, you can determine a focus. And that focus will guide you throughout your days as a studio and will remain to do so whenever you grow. Just always think about the focus. If the thing that you're doing right now is contributing to the focus, then great. If not, you might need to change your path. Be prepared to spend a lot of time on things that you don't like to do. And that's basically in the very early days. If you start a studio, it basically means you're starting a company. A lot of things actually are coming your way: administrative things, accounting, strategy, hiring people, all kinds of things that aren't actually really related to game development. And as you are, for example, a solo founder, one of you will be the CEO probably, or the boss. And that person will do a lot of things related to the team, the structure, the vision of the studio, and so on, and not actually do a lot of game development. So keep in mind that you will probably do a lot of hours on things that you don't really like to do because administration isn't the most fun thing to do. And of course, don't forget that you're running a company. This is not a hobby anymore. If you want to do this as a hobby, it's completely fine. Do it after hours, do it in the weekends, whatever. There is no pressure. But if you're running a company, you have to pay bills, your own wage, your employees' wages. You're responsible for them. So never forget that you run a company then. Don't get in for the short term. If you want to get rich quick, I think game development and making games in general isn't quite your best idea. So developing games takes a long time. Short term, in my opinion, is 1-2 years. It is doable if you have a hit success on your first game, but chances of you doing this are slim to none. So you're in for the long term, so you need to think long term. The vision of your studio is not defined on your first project, it's defined over a couple of projects. So really think long term. Where do I want to be in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? Think about those things. And then eventually, hopefully, this will be successful. But Success doesn't happen overnight. Plan beyond the current project. A big exclamation mark. It's not. This is not meant to be start new projects during your current project and never finish your current project. This is basically just saying that if you want to keep a long-term strategy going, you need to plan beyond the current project. You need to work every project closer towards your end goal. Truth is, you will never probably reach that goal, but plan beyond the current project. Know what you want to do after the project has been completed. If you need to start thinking after the current project is completed, it's too late and you lost valuable time. Don't be too quick to rent an office space. I know it's fun to have an office space with a PlayStation, a bar, food, drinks, parties, whatever. It's cool, but that's money that you could have spent for the growth of your company. Instead of renting out cool food trucks and drinks, etc., you could have poured that money into your game and made perhaps an even better game, more polished game, whatever was needed. Or for your next project, you could have used it to prototype, for example. An office space is cool, but it should be a reward and it shouldn't be your first priority. Prepare for failure, celebrate failure, and learn from failure. Postmortems are really crucial. A postmortem basically means you take a step back after you finish a project or something big, and you look at what happened, what went well, what went wrong, and you iterate it on it. So basically, every time you do a postmortem, the next time you should have done something better. You should have come across different things that you failed, but that's no problem because every time you fail, you learn, but you need to do a postmortem in order to know what went wrong. So really do them from time to time. Not every time has to be after completing a project. It can be after completing certain milestones in game development, but do them. This is tied together with take a step back from time to time and reflect. This is both on a project-based and studio-based. This one in particular, I meant to be a studio based because every time you do something, as I mentioned, it needs to align with the focus. And if it doesn't, then perhaps it's not the best thing to do in order to get you closer to your goal. So from time to time, take a step back because if you're in the heat of something and if you're continually developing and developing and developing, you kind of lose track of what your goal is. So it's very crucial to take a step back from time to time, reflect, and perhaps change. Never forget why you're doing this. Once again, I'm repeating myself, but the focus is super important. But never forget why you started doing this. You had a passion for games, probably. You wanted to create cool games, and at certain moments, it gets tough. And then you need to think, why did I start this in the first place? And this can be a very big motivation for you to keep on going. Keep your scope small. I think this one goes out to all the developers here in the chat. I think all of you know that your scope can get big really, really quick. So it's very crucial to keep your scope small from the start. Eventually, feature creep will come in. Your scope will get bigger and bigger and bigger. But if you start big, your scope will become impossible. If you start small, your scope will become bigger, but it can be manageable. So keep it small. And this is tied together with good project management. You have a lot of software. For example, we use ClickUp. It helps you to keep track of what's happening. It helps you to keep track of your current situation, whether or not you're on planning. If you're not on planning, you can take corrective actions. But if you have no clue how far you are in development or how much you are ahead or behind of schedule, then you're in for trouble. So good project management, a good project manager, producer, is really crucial for getting your game ready on time and keeping costs as low as possible. Keep developing your pipeline. This one is basically based on the post-mortem as well, what went wrong, what went right. But your pipeline is the way that you develop things. Every time you do something, you get better at it. So the more times you do something, the better you get it. And this is what I mean with pipeline. The next time you start a project, you know that something might be done differently easier, more efficiently. And the more times you do it, the better you will become at it. Your first project might take a long time. Your 10th project will take less time if it's the same scope. Double your time estimates, very crucial. Things will go wrong. You will run into bugs. You will run into problems. Problems and bugs take time to fix. Better to be safe than sorry. So double your time estimates. This way you make sure that you finish on time, and better to finish before the deadline because you've doubled it than to finish after deadline because you didn't take into account a buffer. So double your time estimates. Of course, more time means more work, etc. So it's very important to keep a healthy work-life balance. It's all fun and games until you have a burnout. Crunch is something that is very common, unfortunately, in this industry. It's very important to relax from time to time. It doesn't help to keep pushing on a certain thing that might not work at this very moment. Just stop working, go do sport, hang out with family, friends, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, and come back to it the day afterwards. And you will notice that things will go a lot easier. And yeah, it's very important to keep a healthy work life balance because pushing yourself to the limit only lasts so long. And this is because probably if you push yourself too hard, you're not working smart enough. So, working hard doesn't mean that you need to do more hours. It means that you need to work smarter. For example, if you have a 40-hour week and you run into problems that you don't have enough time to complete things, you might think that it's just not possible within that time frame. Perhaps you should be asking yourself, am I working efficiently? Can I do things smarter that could save time while doing the same amount of work? It's a tricky one, but of course, if you keep developing your pipeline, things will get easier and easier, and you will learn from your mistakes. This is also a very crucial one. You have a lot of purists that really want to nail everything that they do, and that's completely fine, of course. But there is a right solution and there is a best solution for now. If you're stuck at something, that's too bad. But just keep working on other things. Just make it like a minimum viable product for that feature, for example, and move on. And then come back to it later on. Perhaps you have another solution that another person, for example, proposed, and suddenly everything makes sense, and you can implement it, and you can move forward. But it doesn't help for you to keep on working at something. It's just better to just, it's okay for now. We'll come back to it later mindset because otherwise your schedule will be much bigger and you will lose much very valuable time that you could have used for other things. So it's okay to just skip it for now. Always have a plan B, C, and D. This is, of course, tied with your game and with your studio. If things don't work out with this current game, what will you do afterwards? This is a very crucial question for every founder because not everything works out as we planned. So have a plan B, but even if plan B doesn't work, have a plan C and D. I know it's kind of exaggerated, but it's just to show you that you need to have multiple options for the sustainability of your studio. If you don't think about it and you're a purist and tell people like this project will work, I will put every effort into it and we'll see afterwards. If things go wrong, then you've got a big problem. So have a backup plan. I can hear a message on Discord. I'm in full screen, so I have no idea what's going on in the chat. So I will keep the questions for at the end, and I will definitely have some time left. But for now, I think I will just keep on going. Otherwise, I need to exit full screen. Might be a little bit weird. So questions at the end, and I will happily answer them. Make sure you have a co-founder that shares the same vision. Sometimes we run into teams that have two completely different profiles when it comes to co-founders, which is fine, of course, but you need to have the same vision. If you don't share the same vision, you will run into discussions, and discussions are sometimes the end of your studio if they are really, if they don't get solved immediately. this might be a very, very bad thing for your studio. So before founding a studio, before founding a company that requires a lot of responsibility, make sure that you and your partner know that you're basically on the same wave, that you share the same vision. Otherwise, it might not be your best bet to do something with that person that requires a lot of responsibility, money, etc. So please make sure you share the same vision. And this is, of course, also a great one. Great fences make great neighbors. So get the ownership structure right. If you are 50-50 split with a co-founder, but you are doing 90% of the work and the other co-founder isn't, that is not fair. So make sure that everyone that is involved is treated as should. And this is, of course, reflected in the ownership structure. If you have a person that really puts his heart and soul in, puts money in, puts in a lot of hours, whereas others might not do that, well, that should be reflected in the ownership structure. And please get a lawyer for this or an accountant to advise you in those kinds of things. It's good that you trust each other, but if a investor comes with a big bag of money, this is when things might turn out to be different than you expected. So get it right from the start, and there will be no discussion at the end. Surround yourself with like-minded people. Of course, you need to be involved with people that share the same vision. Can be co-founders, but can also be employees, can also be freelancers, can also be agencies. With everything that you do, you need to make sure that the people share your vision. They think the same things as you. Easier said than done, of course, but try to get as much like-minded people around you as possible, because that's what really motivates you as well. Fun people, of course. You don't want to be around annoying people all the time. You probably spend more hours with your coworkers or employees or whatever than with your own family. So it's best to have fun with each other. Diverse people. We're a strong believer that diverse people can be male, female, whatever profile is around in the studio. The more different types of people you have in the studio, the more creativity, the more ideas, and the better games you will create. Professionals. This goes to say that you need to surround yourself with, for example, lawyers from time to time. If you're dealing with contracts, you need to surround yourself with good accountants when it comes to money. For example, marketing agencies, for example, porting studios, development assistant, whatever service you need, surround yourself with a professional, do your homework, look at the people that they've worked with, ask questions, and only go work with them if you're really convinced of them. But professionals, certainly in different areas, require expertise, and we do not have all the expertise. That's completely normal. I don't have all the expertise. I think none of the people I know have all of the expertise in their in-house. So get the professional when needed. It costs money, but it's worth it. Hire slow, fire fast. Do your due diligence. Do tests. Know that the people that you want to hire could be a great fit in your team and can contribute to your vision. And if it turns out it isn't, or he or she isn't contributing in the way that you expected, don't be afraid to fire. It's always an unpleasant conversation. However, if you postpone it and postpone it and postpone it, that might have a more negative effect on your studio than just firing the person that causes it. So don't be afraid to fire people. Hire all-rounders in the beginning, especially the indie studios. In the very beginning, it doesn't really make sense to hire specialists in their niche because you will wear many hats. And in the beginning, I think we personally find it crucial that you can be tasked with multiple things at the same time. If one thing is done, finished, that you don't just stick around and wait for something other things that happen. So make sure in the beginning, all rounders. For example, IGP is a great course for that, because you're basically trained as in multiple different domains, which is great. There are, of course, multiple other educational programs or even courses online that you can follow, but just pure niche profiles aren't really the best hires at the very beginning. Of course, the more you grow, the more niche you need to hire. But in the beginning, it doesn't really make sense. Trust matters. Communication is key. Transparency is king. I think that it really makes sense for you as co-founders or as the management per se. It's very important to be transparent to your employees, because if you're transparent, that boosts the communication within the team, because they know that you're being transparent, it's open, and that builds trust. And that's what you really want in the early days, is you want people that you can trust, because trusted people, or people that are happy in general, are people that you can trust and that trust each other, are crucial to building your studio. They will do the extra mile. If something goes wrong, they have the courage to talk to you, and they know it's just discussable. So transparency, please. If you found a studio and you hire people, or just between co-founders, be transparent. If things go wrong, talk to each other. If things go right, also talk to each other. But communication and transparency in particular is very valuable. Don't be too quick to agree on deals. So now we're moving more on when something great happens, of course. For example, a deal with a publisher. It's all fun. You're pretty excited at that moment, and you think, wow, we made it. Well, not really at that moment, but it's really exciting, of course. Just know that whatever you may be offered might not be the best thing for you. So don't be too quick to agree. Hire a lawyer, so surround yourself with a professional. Take your time to read through, take your time to discuss internally with the team, and then agree or disagree. But don't be too quick. It's better safe than sorry, so protect yourself. Again, lawyers, very important in this industry, intellectual property, all the nitty gritty with financials. So protect yourself, because otherwise you will run into surprises, and that's something that you don't want as a studio owner. Go outside, talk to events, go to events and talk to people. It's a kind of a stereotypical image of a developer that is kind of introvert. I think being the guy that's introvert is no problem whatsoever, but having the courage to go to an event and just to talk to people can get you a long way, because you can get your foot in the door at some very crucial companies, or with some very important people that can later on kickstart your studio, or give you opportunities that you otherwise never would have had. So don't be afraid. Just go outside, talk to people. I know it's awkward sometimes, but just prepare and have something to talk about. Be confident. Go outside and get inspired is more game related. I know it's easy to have a vision for a certain thing, but sometimes the vision isn't there from the beginning, and it's kind of difficult to create like a unique art style or certain mechanics to introduce in your game. The best inspiration is to just go outside, and with go outside, I mean browse on Steam probably, or whatever library, or perhaps go to events like a Gamescom. It's also a very good way of getting inspired by other people, by other games, by mechanics, whatever. The more you look into it, the more things you will learn that you can apply to your own projects. Aim for revenue. So it's great to make a game, but it's even better to make a game that generates revenue, because ultimately you have to pay bills, wages, whatever costs involved. So aim for revenue from the beginning, unless it's a hobby project. It doesn't really matter. But if you're a studio, you need to aim for revenue. How do you do this? Market research, and market research. So basically, what I tell people is marketing starts before development, and that is called market research. If you are developing a game that has no audience, it will not sell. So do your research, know what people are looking for, and cater to that audience. Before that, you need to understand your audience, and this is quite a funny picture that I always like to include. Is you have person one, Prince Charles, that is actually King Charles now, and they have Ozzy Osbourne, a famous metal singer. Well, actually, based on data, they're basically the same person. So if you go into tools and you have data sets and whatever, it's all cool and fun and games. But these are two completely different profiles. So that's why it's very important that you understand your audience. Just looking at data isn't enough. Look at reviews, go into forums, talk to people at events, whatever, join clubs. Perhaps there are groups of similar games that have, for example, for example, Magic the Gathering, whatever you're making a card game. Well, go ahead and go to events that have those types of people, talk to them, understand them, and know what they're looking for. This is the only way that you can really develop a game that you can cater to your audience. Talk to people, learn from them, and then cater to that audience. Also, show what you're working on. It's kind of a taboo in the game development. Is when should I start sharing stuff? Well, actually, just immediately. Not everything, of course, but if you are developing something for a certain audience, involve that audience. Because if you showcase something, they might have feedback that is incredibly valuable for you in the production cycle. So you can tweak things, you can add things, you can remove things, and you can only do it by gathering feedback. So playtesting is super important to get your game as good as possible. So yes, show what you're working on. For example, for a select amount of people and not the entire audience. If you want to do something with a marketing exposure beat, like a reveal trailer, whatever, but involve people, involve the right people. And then kill your darlings. This is, I think, the most important slide, perhaps, of the entire presentation. If you look at the market, you develop something and it's still not working, you've tried everything you can, but there's just no traction whatsoever, don't be afraid to pull the plug. It's better to just kill it, move on to a different concept or a different prototype or whatever that might work. You do redo the things, you test and test and test. But if it's not working, it's not worth your time to pursue because you know that you're just investing more and more time and money in it. And eventually, no one will actually buy it. So just kill it, move on to a different project. Ideas are worthless, execution is key. I get asked from time to time to sign an NDA based on an idea. Well, it's cool, but I think like the execution is key. You can have the multi-million-dollar idea. The only thing that is interesting to me is the execution. Show me that you can deliver on those ideas, show me the gameplay, and then we'll sign an NDA. No problem. It's very crucial to be able to deliver on ideas, and that's only done through a good team, good project management, and a realistic scope. Don't launch too quick. I also see a lot of projects that are launching full of bugs. AAA is not on a very good spree of launching games that aren't bug free. That goes the same for indie games. Don't launch your game too quickly. If you launch a game you want to show to the audience, it might be in the form of a closed alpha testing, a demo, join Steam Next, upload your demo and gather data. But if you launch something that isn't ready, well, your game is kind of dead at the start, and that's a shame, of course. So you don't want that. But the other scenario is also not really good. Don't launch too late. I think we all know Cyberpunk and the story behind it. So it got postponed a couple of times, which basically meant that people's expectations went up and up and up and up. So you're basically hyping up the game more and more and more, which increases their asks. And if you don't deliver it, then people will be disappointed and reviews will be mixed or negative. So it's very important also to not launch too late, better to do it a little bit too early without major bugs, of course, than do it way too late. Make everything an experiment. Whatever you do, project-based, studio-based, make it an experiment. A/B test things because that's the only way you know that things work and don't work. So don't be afraid to experiment with a company culture. For example, a lot of studios are now experimenting with 4-day work weeks. Try it out, see if it works in your studio. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, then simply don't. So turn everything into an experiment because that's the only way that you'll definitely know if something will work or won't work. But if you're too scared to try, you will never know. And lastly, of course, enjoy the ride. I mean, founding a studio is probably one of the craziest things you can do, especially for game developers. It's definitely a ride. It has ups and downs. It's very stressy at times, but also very rewarding from time to time. So just enjoy it. It's probably one of the biggest adventures in your life. You might as well just enjoy while it lasts. And if it continues to last, all the better. And lastly, I just quickly wanted to introduce you about DAE Studios. So DAE Studios, of course, is my employer. It's the biggest Belgium game incubator and accelerator. And what we basically offer is mentorship. We have a lot of very talented people in our team that have expertise in their domains, but also a network around it. We have business opportunities with publishers, investors, etc. We offer company funding. Basically means that we invest in your company for the long term because we really believe in what you're doing. Network of publishers and investors already talked about. Expert talks and workshops. From time to time, normally every month, we organize at least one talk or workshop that really helps the early studios, but also just is very interesting to attend to. And also, we offer a lot of community feel within our game community, basically playtesting, lunches, whatever we do. It's always fun to hang around with like-minded people, share stories, share knowledge. We have different starting points: discovery, incubator, accelerator. Without going into further detail, you know we have a website, so feel free to look onto the website. Talk to me, talk to Michiel, talk to Jill, talk to Vic if you have any questions. But that's it for me, and that was it for the talk. So thank you all for listening.